mana i ngā reo, i ngā maunga whakahi, tēnā koutou katoa. E te rangatira, Kazi, Tapuwae. Obviously dressing from the House of Raukawa today. Tēnā koe. O tērā kei aku rangatira, tēnei te mihi mai oha ki a koutou katoa i tēnei rā. Ko tainui tōku waka, ko otaki tōku awa, ko tararua ngā pai maunga, ko Ngāti Raukawa ki te Tonga, ko Ngāti Rārua, ko Ngati Koata hoki ngā iwi, ko Ngāti Huia, tōku hapu, ko Katihiku, tōku marae, ko Rachel Taulelei, tōku ingoa, or if you're Māori, Rachel Taulelei, either works. Good morning, everyone here and everyone online. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I literally can't believe how many people you have pulled together. So I just want to give a shout out and a round of applause to Te Pūtea Whakatipu. It's amazing. You know, you have all my mates in one place and we literally can't organise ourselves a dinner, but clearly you have something that we don't have for each other because we've all turned up here today. Arama, it's awesome to share the stage with you. My funny story about Arama is that when I was finishing university, a couple of you have heard this, but when I was finishing university, I was thinking about what I might go and do next, and I did all the rounds with my law degree in my back pocket of the cocktail parties where they interview you, and no one bid. Like, no one wanted me. I was really, obviously still distressed about that, because I've held on to it for a little while. And at the time, my dad was exporting, and he was interacting with the Māori Enterprise team at New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and I kept just gate crashing their events and just being there and being there and being there. And then finally, Artemis says to me, "Look, you're here a lot. Did you maybe just want a job?" I was like, "Well, okay, that sounds good." I was like, "Phew," because there's that student loan in my back pocket too, next to the law degree. So I took the job, and then that was the beginning of our working relationship, and then we ended up working in the States together. So that was a very lucky moment, which I also recall I accepted quite ungraciously, because I think I said at the time, I mean, yeah, that would be great, thank you. Although you should know I'm going to be a lawyer, so, you know, there's that. But once in there with Arama, I didn't look back, so it was amazing. So I appreciate you giving me that opportunity, really just giving in to me, which is what happened. So when I spoke to Tapuwae last week, he rang me and said, "So you all ready, you know, like, you know what you're going to talk about?" And I was like, "Yeah, what did you want me to talk about though?" And he said, "Well, I'd love you to talk about how directors can innovate at the board table." And I literally had organ rejection to that idea. I was instant, like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, is it a director's role to innovate? Really? And so my puku at the moment, or that moment, said, like, hell no. But I chalked that up to a moment of, like, CEO PTSD, of throwing my whole body on idea grenades that were lobbed at me from my own directors. I love you, though. Over the years, I've already given a disclaimer to him. But you know, that's sometimes what it feels like as a CEO. So I was instantly like, oh no, you don't need directors innovating, oh no. But instead of changing the whole topic, the way that people can do at conferences like this, into something that they feel much more comfortable with, I kind of let it sit for a while, just let it marinate for a little while. And in the back room, I was saying this to Mavis and a couple of others, and they cracked up and were like, "Yeah, you're the worst offender for innovating at the board table." So I was right to come up with an answer to that challenge. So for the purposes of the next 15 minutes, you are going to be subject to the findings of a focus group of one, me, that's how I roll. And actually, as a rule, I should say that you should never take on the findings of a focus group of one, because it's literally the definition of anecdotal. But I have the mic, and so here come my findings. So to the partai at hand, Tapuwae, because I feel like you were attached to this, whose job is it to innovate? And the easy answer to that is that it's everyone's job to innovate. You know, you heard about Arama's experiences in the startup and the VC world, and there's innovation everywhere, from the board table down through into management and beyond. But we are at a governance hui, all 1,000 of us. It's literally every Māori in the country who's either on or board or thinking about it. So I will speak to this topic from a governance standpoint, and I'll do it in 3 parts, but I'll start with the punchline. So 100%, it is a director's job to innovate, but maybe not in the way that you might imagine. So it is my extraordinarily well-researched and qualified and quantified focus group of one position that it is a director's job to innovate themselves so that they can remain current and smart and informed and helpful. It is a director's job to innovate the practices at a board table so that that board can look and feel like the strongest, most authentic version of themselves. And it is a director's job to create an environment where management can become innovation ninjas so that they can get about doing things better and doing better things, as my cousin Miriana Stevens would say. But given that alone, I don't imagine will get me lunch to Puoho, I will go a little deeper into these findings. So to my first point, that it is a director's job to innovate themselves first and foremost so they remain current and smart and helpful. So when you're asked to join a board, it is likely because you have had a stellar career, that you have relevant and exceptional experience. That's why you've been invited into this space. That experience is possibly taken from another governance role, or if you're new to the governance world, it's probably taken from your management experience. If it's the latter, you probably went to loads of development programs over the years, and your company probably invested pretty heavily in keeping you fresh in that role. As a director, those days are over. Yes, I know. Seriously, like you're on your own, cue violins and all that. But what I mean is that there are a few companies who have a fund dedicated to continuing the education of a director as a director. Like if your experience is marketing, if it's technology, if it's digital, your skill set will fade unless you make your job about keeping it current, because you can't rely on experience. You have to maintain a contemporary skill set. And in case you're wondering, that does not mean reading the Herald, it does not mean reading the NBR, I suggest you don't actually do that anyway, and it does not consist of watching Te Ao with Moana, although I do recommend you do that. By the time it's in the mainstream media, it's old news. So what I do mean is that you have to get out and find the world-leading blogs, podcasts, you have to follow whomever is on the best Twitter feed, and knowing what they know, but today. It also means that you have to step out and get new experiences in your chosen field of governance. So if you're on a fishing board, get yourself on a boat. If you're on a farming board, go get you some gumboots, go to a farm, go to the killing floor. If you're on a retail group, be in those stores every day, because there is just literally no way that you can have the influence you wish to have as a director if you don't walk a day in your people's shoes and stay relevant to them. So, you innovate yourself, you invest in yourself to stay current, so at a minimum you can keep up, and at best you can stay one step ahead. One of the best ways I've found to do that, for me, and it doesn't work for everyone, is that you remain, as I remain rather, both in management and governance simultaneously. So management and moving operationally, and Arama I'm sure has the same experience, it gives you an edge that you just can't get in governance. So the day in, day out hustle of building a business, managing a P&L end-to-end, corralling people, selling, and straight up doing. And it's not a slight on governance, but that's just not the role of directors. And the minute I see directors hustling, I get a little bit twitchy, and maybe a little bit side-eye. As I say, which is ironic given I probably display those characteristics periodically. But maintaining them together is what keeps me sharp at the table. Like my phone literally says, "Good morning, hustlers" on it. So, that's definitely a preferred mode, but it's the management that lets me have that out so I can have enough momentum to bring to the board table. So you innovate yourself as a person, and I guarantee you will be a better director. And as a final word for this point, I would say that in your quest to innovate yourself as a director, I recommend that you seek feedback early and as often as people will give that to you, and most specifically from the chair. Because trust me, you will be one of the few that ask for that feedback. She will appreciate it, and she will appreciate you. So moving on to my next point, that it is the job of a director to innovate the practices at a board table, so the board looks and feels like the strongest, most authentic version of itself. In my experience, a lot of boards adopt practices lifted directly from a handbook, or their past experiences, which in turn were lifted from a handbook. And there's a place for that, particularly if you are, for instance, on a publicly listed board, but it's not exhaustive. Boards can be formal, they can be serious, they can be conservative, and they can be monotone. You know, the boardroom, the chair, the minutes, the resolutions, the charters, the disclosures, the matters arising, the suits, the high heel. I do have sneakers on, so, just gonna mix up a bit. But the suits, the high heels, and the 200-page PowerPoints, they're all these apparent symbols of power and influence, and they send forceful messages about how we are supposed to and expected to behave and act and speak and think. But it turns out we all have our own lived experiences, our own beliefs, our own stories, opinions, hobbies, friends, mistakes made, and successes achieved. And we shouldn't leave those at the door. We need to bring them into the boardroom with us. And as I love to have been told by one of my fellow directors, keep it in barbecue language. So a phenomenon I've seen over the years, largely in Māori business, is that we adopt practices and processes that are Western and orthodox in nature. And they work. But at their heart of hearts, they're not us. And so we karakia. We kiss, we hongi, we hug, we roast like no one else. We laugh, we resolve things, we collectivise. No, don't group think. We think long term, and we derive our power from tupuna. So I implore you, as existing or those even thinking about getting into governance, not to leave that at the door. As we grow into our potential as Māori, we've got to use our atua given strengths as such. Which means we innovate our practices at the board table. We remain authentic in doing so, we remain courageous and curious and powerful. Oscar Wilde said, be yourself because everyone else is taken. And when I read that, I read, you do you. And so to my final point, it is a director's job to create an environment where management become innovation ninjas so that they can feel sufficiently empowered to do better things and do things better. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, don't task them with work, but rather you teach them to long for the endless immensity of the moana. So it's your job as directors to create an environment where management love what they do and that they are empowered to run at it every day, like really run at it. Moana team's freaking out now. They're like, oh shit. They have to love, or at least really look forward to getting to the board meeting, to present themselves, to seek support, to test their theories, to learn and to get answers and direction from their board. So it's your job as a director to listen and to challenge that without the gotcha moments. And you know what those are. As a director, you are not the referee, and God forbid you are not a substitute player. Our role is to coach and be a cheerleader, infinitely more than it is to be a critic. And clearly when something is not going well, it needs to be called to task, but it's vital that we encourage the right behaviour instead of just calling out the wrong behaviours. And a phrase I've heard often used at a board table is adding your 5 cents. But honestly, with the best intentions, 5 cents from a director can usually worsen the outcome because it unintentionally reduces a person's ownership of their idea. Trust me, I've done it, and I've been on the receiving end of it. Not from you though, Johnny, you're awesome. I still love you. Look, the moments though, a really good idea is presented and the team is obviously excited about it, and then you say, if I can just add my 5 cents, but have you tried X? You think you're adding value, but on a number of occasions you might have, and I know that I have, actually undermined ownership. And what I've learned from that is to ask better questions. And the best questions come from genuine curiosity, not to show the rest of the table how smart you are. And it is an art to ask propelling questions, questions that move the discussion forwards, not backwards. And there are great questions that you can ask without even knowing the topic, but if your axe is sharpened, if you're at my table and if you've read your papers, you will know the topic. But you might ask, what other options did we explore? Does this fit our strategy of X? What do our customers think? What do our consumers think? My favourite question asker of all times is Bob Shaw from Wakatua Corporation, who used to start his best questions with, And I should tell you, Bob's an oracle, so he literally knows everything. But he started his best questions with, look, I may be confused, but, or it might be like, it might just be me, but. So he gives you this runway so you can prepare yourself for his really, what always was a great question. So I appreciate a runway to a tough question. And hey, look, just to close this thought out about asking good questions, and this is advice I received from a really good friend of mine, Tony Belfray, and a director on the Warehouse Group, just ask your questions. It doesn't need to come with a speech. So if we can create the right environment, management will be really easily able to innovate. They can be those ninjas, they change their thinking, and they can maintain an attitude of constant improvement and aspiration. Because people will try to do the right thing given the right environment. And as directors, we can encourage that with positive reinforcement and recognition. And you will all know that New Zealanders are pretty poor at open and genuine recognition. We can be a nation of nitpickers and naysayers, and around Māori tables, we wear humility like it's a badge of honour, which is fine until it cripples you. And as a director, you've got to give recognition where it's due for the little and the large, and often and with intent. Not with a weak kind of kapua you, but with a massive hell yeah! You know, that's what I want to hear around the table when people do well, because your management are your people, as Artemis said. They're your people. There's a school of thought that says you could hire the greatest people and then stay out of their way, which is not exactly the advice I'm giving to you today, but what I am saying is it is our job as directors to make management feel sufficiently supported that they can innovate and take risks. That when they get them right, when they fly, they get the accolades. And when they flop, because sometimes they do, you're the one there to help dust them off, pick them up, and get them back on the track. And there are exceptions to the rule, but they're just usually that, exceptions. So my focus group of one has nearly exhausted its thoughts on the topic, but let me end by saying that governance should be interesting, sometimes exciting, but never boring, never boring. You have to bring your whole self to the table, which is, I will say, easier said than done. No matter how seasoned you are as a director, it's tough to bring your whole self to the table, but it's something to tuck away next time you're there as management or as a governor. So think about that one, and maybe think about the other things we've spoken of in the last few minutes. You know, have you created an authentic environment? Are you keeping your axe sharp? Are you being the coach, not an off-the-bench player or a whistle-happy ref? Are you creating an environment where management can innovate? Are you giving ups where they're called for? Are you leaving your 5 cents in your pocket but asking good questions which spark up insight? And finally, because it's a favourite topic of mine, are you using your direct powers wisely? Nō reira, enjoy the rest of your day. It looks amazing. I can't wait to hear my fabulous friends speak even more. This morning's already been a really great start. Kia ora.